Okay, here we go. Zog the Heilige Mishnah. Kosav legares is ishto. A person wrote a get to divorce his wife. So he merely wrote the get. He didn't give it to her. V'nimlach, and he changed his mind. He's not going to give her the get. And then he dies. Is his wife is an almana. Normally an almana can marry a kohen. Nevertheless, she may no longer marry a kohen. Why? So the Rishonim are masbir that there's something called reach haget. It smells like a get. It's not a get. He never gave her a get. But there's something called a reach haget. It smells like a get, and since it smells like a get, she's psul min hakahuna. And there's a lot of discussion in the Rishonim how this reach haget works. One simple way to understand it is that it's not a chumra in gerushin at all. It's a chumra in kahuna. We're very makbid on the kedushas hakahuna, and therefore, even though she didn't actually receive a get was merely written for her, it's enough that she's going to be possible from kahuna. However, Chassam Sofer is a very cute shot, and he says as follows: there's a machloikis between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel for what reason someone can divorce his wife. Beis Hillel says for any reason, afilu hechtiach tavshila, even if she merely burnt his breakfast. On the other hand, Beis Shammai holds you could only give a get to a woman in matzah ba ervas davar. He found that she behaved inappropriately. So based on that machlokes, Beis Shammai holds that if someone wrote a get for his wife already, he must have caught her doing something inappropriate. A woman who did something inappropriate would have the status of a zoyna, she would be pasal l'kahuna. So maybe that's the story why Beis Shammai holds she's pasal l'kahuna. Beis Hillel, on the other hand, says that for any reason someone could give his wife a divorce. So just because a kohen decided to give his wife a divorce, that doesn't mean that she did anything wrong at all.
And he doesn't have a chance of changing his mind?
Well, he doesn't have to divorce her, but she still will be pasal to the kahuna. The question is, what if he's a kohen?
As long as he didn't give it, he's not doing anything. I mean, it says, the Torah says, because of law, Sefer creases.
Right.
And we paskin that it means that the v'nasan law, because of v'nasan.
Right.
And if it's not v'nasan, the get is not a get.
That's right. It's not a get at all. It's just a chumrah of kahuna. That since there was a rech get, that's a cheshmek get around her, it's enough that we're makbid.
Every time you have a
your
fight,
kash is very important because it highlights that this is not a get at all. It's merely a chumrah that the kohen, it's a chumrah in kedushas kahuna. And Rashi describes it later as that. It's a chumrah in kedushas kahuna. We're so makbid in the yuchsin of kahuna, even a woman with some gedet from the get can no longer marry a kohen. The shaila is if he has to divorce his wife if he's a kohen, and Pashtus we're going to see that wouldn't be necessary.
Yosy, I just to go over it. So the ksiva obviously was a kosher get. It wasn't v'nimlach, and he thought about divorcing her because every married woman, at one point, the husband thought about throwing her out.
Like the get ever said, in their need.
So, right. So the get has to be a kosher get.
The get is a vada kosher get. Yeah, vada is a kosher get. Beis Hillel is on the totally opposite end of the spectrum. Beis Hillel said, what if he actually gave her a get, but he gave her a get that would be chal based on the t'nai? So he actually gave her a get. She received the get. But the t'nai was not fulfilled, so that's much, much worse than somebody who just wrote a get. That wouldn't possible. So Beis Hillel disagrees with Beis Shammai about this reich haget issue, and he holds avada it didn't possible her from kahuna, and halacha l'maisa, as you see the little aleph, we paskin like Beis Hillel.
Does Beis Shammai say that if he writes her a get, she's not allowed to eat any truma anymore? How
I don't
far-
think so. I think it's just a chumrah. It's just a chumrah in marrying a kohen.
if
I
he
don't
can,
think
if he can still eat in truma, then there's definitely no reason why there should be why they should say that.
so. So you're basically telling me that you hear Beis Hillel svar. And that's not what Beis Hillel holds. That's not what Beis Hillel holds. As an aside, today in shul we had a very illustrious visitor. There was a young, former Israeli soldier who was in the shul. So he was dressed with a big kippah sruga. It was like a shtreimel, and he was dressed in white, and he had a gartel. And after speaking with him a little bit, it turns out that he's a group of ex-Israeli soldiers that were injured in battle. He literally took bullets to save Eden. And there's a non-firm organization that brings in every year a whole group of these boys in the summer and gives them a really good time. Takes them up to the cottage. It's not a firm organization. So he came with a whole group of people. There were al chalonim. He was the only one who was firm. So he came on his own to shul. And in talking with him, we found out that he's mamash shayid who literally took a bullet for somebody else. So Shabbos by Mincha, we gave him an aliyah. So someone came over to me and asked me, "You're not afraid of getting hell from David Kleiner for giving somebody without a hat and jacket an aliyah?" So I said, for someone who took a bullet for Klal Yisrael, I'll take hell for him. So it was a beautiful show. So he told us he was in Gaza. It was about 10 years ago. And they were going to take down a terrorist in a house. And they were ambushed by a whole bunch of terrorists behind him. And someone threw a grenade right beside him and it busted up his shoulder. And then they were under live fire for 40 minutes by a group of terrorists that were behind him. It was very scary. 15 of them were severely wounded. He was one of them. And 2 of the people in his group died there. So it was a horrific, tragic event. But here we had a Yid amongst us who literally takes bullets to protect other Yidden. So we were very honored to have him. So let's see the Gemara weiter. Shalach le Rabbi Yosef, Bareder of Menashe, Midavil, Lishmul. Yilamdeinu Rabbeinu. Rebbe, please teach us. Now this case is not directly connected to the Machlokes Pesham and Beis Hillel. The Shaila here is only according to Beis Hillel, we'll see soon, but it was a related question, it was somewhat relevant. And this is what happened. Yotza olav koil, ish ploni koyin, kosav get le'ishtoi. It was known, there was a rumor going around that this person, Chaim Cohen, gave a get to his wife. But the rumor was not that he gave a get, asher nosam get. The rumor was asher kosav get. It's a chilak shrab a get for his wife. But we see that they're living together, like husband and wife. And the question Rashi tells us is, do we need to be choshed to the rumor that he divorced her and then he took her back, which is an Isur Deraisa of a kohen marrying a grusha. He's not allowed to do that. Mahu, what is the halacha? Do we have to separate them? Zok to Gemara, Shalach lei, Shmuel told them, Teitzei, we will have to separate them, but before we jump the gun to separate them, I need to analyze the situation to be sure. So if you read the Gemara as it's written here, it sounds like Teitzei first, let them separate. After they separate, but if you look at the lashon of Rashi, Rashi seems to say Teitzei, which is the last word on the 4th line in Rashi on the top. Teitzei, because of this rumor, we will have to separate them. So people shouldn't. I'm sorry. Teitzei mipnei aval hadavar tzarich b'dika haidem shenoit tziyana mimen. Yes, we might have to separate them, but before we jump the gun and separate them, I need to look into something first. So Zog to Gemara, Maigi, what exactly did Shmuel need to look into? If he had a Shaila Lahalocha, and the Shaila Halacha was Ima Vatlin Kala Oilema Vatlin. And Rashi explains, what if there's a rumor about someone doing something wrong. In this case, the rumor is that he's a kohen who remarried his gerusha. Are you supposed to actively look for Adam to testify that this is in fact not true? He never divorced her and therefore will protect their marriage? Or maybe we don't do such things. We don't look for Adam to try to quell the rumor. We should act on the rumor and separate them. So is that the question that Shmuel was struggling with? Now you're going to ask me, why would we not try to quell a rumor? If there's a rumor of wrongdoing and we could find Adam to testify that nothing happened that was inappropriate, and then we could publicize it, why would you not do something like that? So we're going to see in just a moment. You cannot say that that's the shayla that Shmuel was struggling with, because we know for a fact that Shmuel already made a psak halacha, a psak halacha about this halacha, because v'hanarda after the Shmuel. Everybody knows that who was the Rav of Narda? It always followed Shmuel. It was his domain. He. Uvinarda lo bevachlikala. In Narda, they never tried to quell rumors. Why would they not try to do that? So Rashi tells us why. Rashi says, Uvinarda unvatikala. Why not? You know what people are going to start saying about Dayanim who are always looking to find Adam to dispel rumors? They're trying to help the Oiver Aveir. They're trying to cover up the Oiver Aveir. That doesn't look good. So because of that, the Mul Paskin in Arda, if there's a rumor, even if it's not correct, we're not going to try to prove it wrong. We have to deal with it because otherwise we'll risk the impression that we're trying to do cover-up. So that cannot be the shayla because we know Shmuel Paskins clearly that way. So what was Shmuel's consideration as to why we should not separate them right away? Ella, this is what the separation is. The rumor was not that the kohen gave his wife a get. The rumor was that Galosh Shirab in a get. He wrote a get for his wife. The question is, what is the colloquial speech? When we're describing someone divorcing his wife, do we say he wrote a get for his wife? In other words, we mean that he actually gave it to her? Maybe that's what it means. Or maybe no. When someone says, when we say he wrote a get for his wife, it only means he wrote. And it didn't mean that he gave. So therefore, the rumor itself, is it a rumor that would make her usher to her husband? Or maybe the rumor itself doesn't even make her usher. So first, let's look into see how people speak. If people only use the word ksiva to describe ksiva, then we'll let them stay married. But if people, when they want to talk about someone actually giving a get, they say that he wrote a get, then we have a problem with it. So let's see that inside. We need to look in to see if people use the word ksiva to describe nesina. Frank the Gemara, even if that was true, the rumor still shouldn't be a problem. Because let's say they use the word ksiva to describe nesina. But l'ksiva gufa, mila kar l'ksiva, just because when they say he wrote a get for his wife, they might mean that he actually gave it. But what if he only wrote it? They would say the same thing. He wrote a get for his wife. So when they say, when there's a rumor that says he wrote a get for his wife, we can't be sure that the rumor means to say that he actually gave it. Gemara, you're right about that. But the imegalia milsa, the karil and the ksiva, if in fact people do use the word ksiva to describe an actual nesinas aget, dilma nosen kamri. The rumor is not clear. The rumor might mean that he gave a get, and therefore that's enough for us to be choshid that there's a problem here, and that he was machzir grushasai, and therefore takes it. That's what Shmuel wanted to figure out. Find out how people speak, and if people actually mean give a get when they say he wrote a get, then we would have to separate. For Gemara, we have a problem because we don't listen to all rumors. For instance, let's say there was a woman in town, and it was known that she was married to Reuben, and she now wants to go marry Shimon. We won't let her marry Shimon because there's a rumor about her that she's married to Reuben until we can confirm that Reuben gave her a get. But we wouldn't stop let her marry because we have to assume, because of the rumor, that she's married. But what if she actually already married Shimon? and there's a rumor comes out that she was married to Reuben before. Do we make Shimon divorce her because we're afraid that she never got a get from Reuben? No. We ignore rumors that come out once a woman is married already. If a rumor comes out after she already remarried, you ignore. So here you have a Kohen who might have been married to his wife for 50 years. And now a rumor comes out, and because of that, you want to make him divorce his wife? You would never do that. So again, why is Shmuel saying that because of this rumor, the Kohen would have to divorce his wife? We never listen to rumors that arrive after he's married already. In other words, rumors that would break up a marriage. Dr. Moore, you're right. That's not what Shmuel meant. Shmuel never had a havamina that we're going to break up this marriage. My teite nami, teite misheni. All it means is if this man dies with Hamad al-Islam and she decides to marry another Kohen, now we won't let her marry another Kohen because once she's now free from her first husband because he died, now we're going to label her as a Suffolk Rusha because maybe now the rumor kicks in. While she was married, we ignore it, we don't take it seriously. But now that she became a Pnuya because her husband died, now the rumor kicks in. We're afraid she's a Gerusha, and we wouldn't let her marry a second Kohen. And if she did, we would make him divorce. Right to Gemara, that's a very dangerous chumrah. Imagine she lived with a man for 50 years. She had a big family with him because we ignore the rumor and we say she's not a Gerusha. Then he dies and she remarries somebody else and we force her to divorce. So everyone say, wow, if we're forcing her to divorce, then she's a Gerusha. If she's a Gerusha, then how was she married to the first Kohen? It must be that she was married to the first Kohen in sin, and all of her children are psulim because they're the product of a Kohen who married a Gerusha. So frag to Gemara. Now there's going to be rumors about the children from the first marriage that they were all halal. No, there will not be such a rumor at all. There will not be laws at all. Why? People are going to scratch their heads. If we consider to be her to be a grusha, and therefore we're making her divorce her second husband, well then why didn't we make her divorce her first husband? It must be, you know what must have happened? What probably happened is that her husband divorced her right before he died. So all the years that they were living together, it was perfect. There was nothing wrong. Right before he died, he divorced her. Only then did she become a grusha, and then he died right away. So therefore, we will not allow her to marry another. Come and see the Doros HaAchronim are not so sensitive to the kedusha of the kohen, to protecting the sanctity of the yuchsin of the kohen. Why? Where do you see that? Look at this. Doros HaRishonim are by Shammai. And Rashi says, what did Beis Shammai do? Even because of a reach haget, he wouldn't allow a woman to marry a kohen. So as Rashi says, they were so makbid on the kedusha of yuchsin, so kahuna merely mifnei ksivas again. That's a huge level of chumrah, as Rivera pointed out. It's very big chumrah because we even let her eat truma. Where do you see that the sensitivity was a little bit dulled? From the psak that Reb Doisa said years later. And what was this psak? The Tanya we learned, Shvuya oichelas betruma, a Shvuya who should really be choshed that she was violated by her captors, and therefore she has a status of a zoina which would prevent her or prohibit her from eating truma. Yet Reb Doisa said, even though she was a captive, we let her eat truma. Divi Reb Doisa. And Reb Doisa explained his justification for it. What did this Arab do to her? And Tosfos says, you know why we're using an Arab as an example? Because they're the lowest of the low. They're shtupe zima. So there's no other captor that we would be choshed more, would violate this Yiddish Shemaidala more than this Arab. And even there's a Rabdoisa, we're not going to be choshed that he violated. He might have molested her. Because he molested her a little bit. Is that a reason why we would pass her from kahuna? In fact, we wouldn't. And we hold that once a woman is captured, we have to assume that she is also a kohen, There are those who learn Reb Doisa was only speaking about Teruma Derabona. But whatever the case is, you see on the one hand, Beis Shammai was concerned about a woman who even had a rare again, marry a Kohen, and on the other hand, Reb Doisa held a woman who was even in captivity by an Arab would not be possible. She would be allowed to eat Teruma. The Amar Rabba Bar Bachana Amar Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Rabbi Yehuda Bar Eloi. Borei, let me show you another way. Shaloi Kedoris Harishonim Doris Achronim. Doris Harishonim were so eager to be mechayev their parents in Meiser. What they did was machnitzim perisayim derech taksamoin. They would bring their parents into the front, big grand entrance of their home, because until parents are royat b'nei abayis, till they come in their grand front entrance, they're not mechayev in Meiser. So they would dafka rush them through the grand entrance because they were so excited to be in the kind of mitzvah of a freshest meisers. Doris Achronim, nowadays, we try to avoid triggering a chiyuv to be maaser pairs. Machnizim perisem, their gagois, through rooftops, their karfivois, through parks, we look for ways to bring them in where they won't have a chiyuv meiser. And of course, this is only eating it b'derech arai, snacking on it, or serving it to your animal. But if you want to actually use it properly to grind and make flour and use it, there, even b'derech arai would be usher to do without being mafresh trumas and meisers. Domer Rabbi taught us, Eina tevel mischayev b'meiser, achiyur penei abayis. Well, it comes in the grand front entrance. Shenemar bi'arti hakodesh min habayis. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, even if it didn't come into the house, but it's in the front yard, that's good enough to be mechayev of meisers. Afilu chotzer koivas. Even the chotzer would be kovet lemeiser. Shenemar va'ochlu v'sharecha v'savelu. So sharecha is referring to the gateway, referring to the chotzer. Beautiful. Now we're going to learn a sugya that's a direct chazara of something we learned last week. So it's going to be very, very familiar to us. Hamagarish es ishtoi. Someone divorced his wife, and they were traveling. They found themselves on the same airplane, and they were taking a flight from JFK to Israel with a stopover in Heathrow. And what happened is their leg from Heathrow to Tel Aviv was canceled, and they were stranded overnight in London. So they had to take out a hotel. A hotel in London is a lot of money. So they decided, you know what, let's share a hotel room. They ended up sharing a bedroom together. Beis Shammai says, we don't need to be worried that they had relations. And since a person doesn't like to be mezana, before he had the relations, he said, I read Mukudashishly, Bibiazu. So at least it was a bia, not a nus. So Beis Shammai, I don't need to worry about it. He doesn't need another get. In other words, we're not choshid that he was mekadosher with bia. Now, what is this shaila over here? Is the shaila that we know there was a bia? We're just not sure if it was l'shem nus, as Beis Shammai says, or l'shem kedushin, like Beis Hillel says, or maybe we don't know that there was nus. We just know that they were miyachet together, and the question is, can we assume that if they were secluded together, that there was intimacy? So from the next line in the Mishnah, it's going to be very clear what the shaila of our Mishnah is. Evisai, where do you see there's a suffix? Maybe there was a bia, bismanchin is gashim and nesuin. That's if they were nesuin in the past, and that's when they had to get. Because they're very comfortable with each other, so the likelihood is if they're secluded together in a room, it's going to lead to intimacy. But umoidim ben isgashim in the erison, she'ein etzrichem in a get chain. Beisal agrees that if they were not divorced from nesuin, only erison, which means they were never so very comfortable with each other yet, that even though they're secluded in a room together, we're not going to assume that there were relations there. If they she'ein liboy gaspa, they're not yet comfortable enough to become intimate together. So it seems pretty clear from the Sefer the Mishnah that the machlokes between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel is whether or not we can assume that just because they secluded together, they must have had relations. Beis Hillel said they must have had relations, and Beis Shammai said not necessary.
Do they have the same machlokes when somebody does kedushin, and then they go into a yichud shtibul, and they stay in the yichud shtibul for 10 minutes, It's like they got married already. Like they were able to do the.
We're going to soon see in the Gemara that is what the machlokes is about. And according to Beis Hill, we assume there was a bia, which we paskin like, and according to Beis Shammai, not.
Okay.
Now, I definitely can hear, and I don't know, I didn't look it up, but I definitely can hear that there's a difference between someone who is being married to somebody for a while, where there you for sure say, hein ede yichud, hein ede bia, and the first bia after the chuppah, it's still not liboy gospel. So I could hear to make a distinction, but I don't necessarily know that we do. Omar Rabba Barav Chana Omar Rabbi Yochanan. Machloikis b'sharu and shenivela. The machloikis in our Mishnah is when you know there for sure was a bia. Now we've already proved this wrong because it's clearly from the second half of the Mishnah that that's not the case. But nevertheless, let's hear out Rabbi Yochanan. Omar Rabba Barav Rabbi Yochanan Machloikis b'sharu and shenivela. When we saw for sure, we know that there was a bia there. Now turning on to Omid Beis. The Beis Shammai sovereign. Beis Shammai holds, oh, the mice be lost to be listeners. He wants to have relations with her, and he'll have relations with her, even though it's inappropriate. But we still sovereign, ain't all the mice be lost to be listeners. He wants to have relations with her, but he doesn't want to be business. So therefore he has in mind to do it for kedusha. If no one saw bia, they just saw that they secluded. Divrei HaKoil ain't a tzrich amenu get changed. Frag the Gemara from our very Mishnah, you see in obey that cannot be true, because Tnan and Moedin ben Iskar Shemina Erisin, Shein tzrich amenu get changed, Shein libegatzba. So clearly the whole shaila is whether or not there was a bia by Niskar Shemina Nesuin. V'ibis Arush and Nivala. If you're going to shout on our Mishnah like Rabbi Yochanan, where you know for sure there was a bia, Mali mina Erisin and Mali mina Nesuin. What's the difference if it's libe gaspa, not libe gaspa? We know there was a bia. Ella, because of that, we have to disagree with Rabbi Yochanan. The Mishnah's machlokes is if they didn't see that she was nivala, do you assume that she was or not? Now the problem is Rabbi Yochanan didn't make mistakes. What was Rabbi Yochanan talking about? Zok Gemara, in our Mishnah, it's indisputable that the Tana of our Mishnah understood that the machlokes Beis Shammai and Beis Hill was loy ra'u shenivel. However, there's another brisa that cites the machlokes of Beis Shammai and Beis Hill differently, and that will be consistent with what Rabbi Yochanan said. Rabbi Yochanan the Amar, Rabbi Yochanan who said that the machlokes is when you know for sure there was a bia, and the whole shaila is if it was l'shem kedushin or l'shem zdus, is ki hai tano. That's following Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar's version of the machlokes Beis Shammai and Beis Hill. The Tanya of Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, lo nechleku Beis Shammai Beis Hill al shaloi ra'u shenivala shein tzrichei menu get sheni. Everybody agrees if it was loy ra'u shenivala, you don't need another get. Exactly as Rabbi Yochanan described. Al men nechleku, where is Beis Shammai Beis Hill arguing? Al shara'u shenivala, where we know for sure there was a bia, and the question is, what is the kavanah of the Baal in doing the bia? So Beis Shammai, I remember the mice be lost nus, and therefore we don't have to worry that there was a marriage here. So therefore, no get sheni is required. We're afraid that he would make her a second time, and therefore he needs to give her another get. Now let's go back to our Mishnah. What is the machlokes whether or not you're choshed if they had relations or not? The Teretz is the Gemara. We had Edom that they secluded together, but we don't have Edom that know for sure there was a bia. Beis Shammai Savri, loy amrin on hein ede yichud. You don't say that just because we saw yichud, we automatically assume there was a bia. And that's how we paskin. I'm reading yichud, and like Rivera said, who did in a marriage when they go into a yichud room, we say yichud, and everybody agrees that when this guy in an erisin to ain't a trichei menu get cheni, the kivan they live a gospel since they're not so comfortable together. Frank the Gemara, how could you say that Rabbi Yochanan disagrees with our Mishnah's understanding of the machlokes Beis Shammai and Beis Hill, and he's aligned with the brisa that quotes the machlokes from Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar? We know Rabbi Yochanan always passes like a Shtam Mishnah, and that's our Mishnah. But yet you see Rabbi Yochanan disagrees with our Mishnah. We Omer Rabbi Yochanan Hagi, Omer Rabbi Yochanan Halachic is Tam Mishnah. Who Kimna Lamasnizin in our Mishnah, which is a Tam Mishnah, clearly says that the Machalokis is Vishalai Rosh Nivela. So Gemara, you're right. It's actually a Machalokis even on what Rabbi Yochanan said. It's a Machalokis what Rabbi Yochanan said. His Talmidim had a disagreement as to what Rabbi Yochanan said. Gewaltig. Zog the Heilige Mishnah weiter. Kanza beget kereach. Someone gave his wife a get that was a bald get. We're soon going to see what a bald get means. But whatever the case is, a bald get is possible. And then this woman who accepted a possible get went and got married to another party. So she's an Ashes who's married to another party. Now this get is only possible midarabbanan, not midarais. We had other Mishnais with Gittin that are possible midarabbanan, like it has the wrong date. It's dated not according to the local malchus. So what did the Mishnah say there? All those sanctions that we mentioned earlier in those previous Gittin, that are children from both, and she doesn't get any benefits for the marriage, and he doesn't get benefits. All those sanctions apply here as well. Get kereach. So what is a get kereach? We need to understand a little bit better. So Rashi explains that a kohen who divorces his wife will never be able to remarry her because he cannot marry a grusha. And what if you have a hot-tempered kohen, and on a whim he gets upset and he writes her a get? He messed his life up. So because of that,
and that's why by a kohen you have to fold the get so many times.
Exactly. Because of this concern, they decided to make it very difficult to write a kohen's get. They made special rules about how a kohen's get has to be written, which is very tedious, time-consuming, expensive, and hopefully that will calm him down. And it's interesting to note, as an aside, they didn't say write the get immediately, but we're going to delay how long you can give it. Like they could have made a rule that a kohen's get, he had to wait 1 week after he writes the get before he can give it. They didn't do that. They actually said the get itself had to be very difficult to make. And maybe that's because they wanted to be choshen for Beis Shammai as well. Beis Shammai says even if you merely write a get, it creates a problem. So therefore, they wanted to make it very difficult for the kohen even to write a get. So this is what they said. They said you need a get nekusher. What is a get nekusher? Very, very simple. You take a paper. Let's say this is the paper. Okay, you take a paper and you write on it the first 2 lines. After you write the first 2 lines, you fold the get over on the first 2 lines. And after you fold it like this, you sew it over here and you sew it over here. So now it's sewed down, folded. This is the back of the get that's folded over. You get 1/8 to sign over here. After that 8 signs over here, they write another 2 lines right over here. And then they fold this folded part over again. Sew it down again. Now you have another blank space. This is where the second 8 will sign. Then they write more and they fold it over a 3rd time, sew it down, and sign here. That minimum 3 folds. Sometimes it's a longer get, there's more information, so you'll keep on folding and folding and folding each step of the way and until the get is complete. So that's a get mekusher, which means every single fold in the get has to have a signature on it. What if one fold was missing a signature? That is a get kereach. If there's one fold that's missing a signature, midarabanan, the get is possible. So zog to Gemara, that's if you open up a get, a woman got a get, and they opened it up and they saw it was missing one signature, we consider her having married as an Ashes. But let's take a step back. We're in the middle of writing the get. So if you think about it, depending on how long the get is, they're going to pre-guesstimate how many folds they're going to have to make. So let's say they guesstimate they're going to need 5 folds. So they need to bring 5 eidim to the ksibas aget so that they'll be able to get a separate 8 to sign each fold. What happens when the typer writes it? It took a little bit more, and there ended up being 6 folds. So now he has 5 eidim here, but there's an extra fold. He needs now a 6th aid to sign it. So what do? You got to bring somebody in who is qualified to make that last signature. Dr. Mishnah, Hakoil Mashliman Olav, Divrei Benamis. everybody is good to make that last signature. An Eved, a Goslin, even somebody who's possible for every other Edus, for this signature, just the extra signature, anybody could sign. That is the Pita Benanas. Rabbi Kiva was much more machmer. Ein mashlimun alov elekroivim haru'uy lahein b'makam acher. It has to be somebody who generally is a kosher aid. Now, it could be that in this particular case, if Vibalti is related, he wouldn't be an ideal aid, but as long as he's generally a kosher aid, we'll accept him. You have to understand, he's not making the chalois of the get. We have kosher aidim on the get. He's just one of the add-ons because of the get and the kosher. So for him, even though he's not technically a kosher aid for this particular case, as long as as a person, he's a kosher person, that would be accepted, according to Rabbi Kiva. The Eizehu get kereach. What is the definition of a get kereach? We already know, but now the Mishnah is sharing it with us. Kol sheksharev merubin me'edim. If it has more fold than it has edim, and therefore there's some blanks, that is a puzzle again. Frankly, more my time. Why is a get kereach puzzle? So it's missing one signature. Midrabban, you don't have all the signatures. Big deal, it's missing one. Think about it for a second. The halacha is, if even on a regular get, forget a get mekushim, even on a regular get, let's say a man said, I want 10 people to sign the get, right? If he says, I want all these 10 people to sign the get, if only 9 out of those 10 people sign, it's the get's possible. If one guy dies before he can sign it, the get's possible. Because he dictated, this is what I want. So here you have a get mekushim. He gathers 6 Eidim, because that's how long they think the get's going to be, and they're going to sign. What if the Baal said, I want you all to sign? What if he said Kulchem? If he didn't say Kulchem, it's not a problem at all. But what if he did say Kulchem? If he said Kulchem and one signature is missing, the whole get is possible, they're right. So therefore, if we have a get that's missing one line, and we don't know what happened when they were writing the get, we're choshed maybe the husband said Kulchem, and if one signature is missing, the whole get is possible. Because of that, if you find a get after the fact that was missing the signature on one of the lines, we're choshed that he said Kulchem, and therefore we possible to get, and that's why the Mishnah says, V'chol hadrachim ha'elu ba. But of course, while you're writing the get, if you're missing a line, well, then you could just pull in another 8. And depending on if you hold like bananas, who holds you can use anybody, even an Eved or a Goslin. And according to Rabbi Kiva, you have to use someone who be'etzim is a kosher. Get keirayach hakol mashlimin alav. Correct the Gemara for Rabbi Kiva. Rabbi Kiva makes a distinction between a kar who's a possible aid and an Eved who's a possible aid. What is the difference? Eved my time alone. Why wouldn't he allow an Eved to sign? The teretz is the asur l'meimar kosher l'edus. People are going to say, people who are unlearned, who see this Eved signing this get, they don't chop that the signature is just because of the get kosher. They think it's a real edus. So they can say, hey, I didn't know, but now I know that an Eved is kosher for edus. And they'll accept the edus of an Eved for other things where you actually do need a kosher aid. Frank the Gemara, if that's what we're concerned about, then why does Rabbi Kiva allow a Karov to sign this? Karov Nami also Lameimar kosher edus. You'll have the same concern. Someone not learned who sees that the Karov signed the get will think that a Karov is always believed to be an aid. So that cannot be the reason. Ela Eved Hanu Taima, the Dilma also La Suke La Yuchsa. People know that an Eved is possible for an aid. But if they see that this person who they thought was an Eved signed the get, they'll say, oh, he must not be an Eved. He must be allowed to marry a Bas Yisrael, and they'll allow him to marry a Bas Yisrael. For the Gemara, that explains very nicely why an Eved can't sign. But why can't the Goslin sign? Goslin the Bayuksanu. There's a lot of big Rabbi Ganavim who are shiny yichis, right? The scotcher. So let them sign. Let them sign such a get. Because we don't need to be concerned that they'll marry a Bas Yisrael. They're allowed to marry a Bas Yisrael. Allah Matnan, why did the Mishnah say, Rabbi Kiva Omer, Ein mashlimin alov, ella kroivim, haruin lahayit, v'makamaker, carving Goslin loy. Rabbi Kiva said a Goslin cannot sign. So we need a reason that applies to Goslin and applies to Eved, but does not apply to Kar. Ella, here is the reason. Eved, Hanu Taima. You know why we won't let an Eved sign such a get? The also lememer shechrur shechrei. We know he was never until now. If he's signing, it must be that his Adon freedom, and now he's a regular Yisrael. Gazlan you have the same chash. Also, lememer tshuva abad. They'll say, "Oh, this Gazlan must have done tshuva, and therefore we'll accept him as a name." But by a karev, what are we going to think? That he became ois karev? Karev Michael lememer. Karev kula amoyadi. The karev you can't become ois karev. So therefore, if the reason is that we're afraid that people will think the status changed, the status could have changed by a Gazlan, the status could have changed by Neved, but the status cannot change by a Karev. So on the topic of you could be a Gazlan and you could be Meyuchis, I remember years ago when I used to daven in the boat shul, there was once a very shiny Yid, a Ganev, who used to sit over by the Mizrah. And somebody walked into the Besmerders and looks at that guy there, and he gets disgusted, and he says, that's false Welt. So Yisrael Meyer Marovich was there and says, Ken dat falsche Welt, aber es gefällt mir sehr die falsche Welt. Ich will beglaublich zu Juden umkommen in der Eilung Emes. Ich will du bleiben, ich bin sehr zufrieden du in die falsche Welt, wie lange ich soll noch kennen du bleiben. Gewaltig. Sagt die Gemara weiter. Amar Abzeira, Omar Rabba Bar Shilta, Omar Rabba Abnuna Saba, Omar Rabba Bar Ava. What a beautiful yichus brief. Imagine you get an email that came from Abzeira, who got it from Rabba Bar Shilta, who got it from Abnuna Saba, who got it from Rabba Bar Ava. And this is what it said. Get Kereach, Sharav Shiva. What if it was folded 7 times, the Eid of Shisha, but there was only 6 Eidim, so we're missing one. Or Shisha ve'ed of Chamisha, or Chamisha ve'ed of Arba, or Arba ve'ed of Shloita. All of these cases where there's one line that requires an aid to sign, not necessarily a kosher aid. This is, in this case, when there's 3 for sure kosher, and the question is if you need a 4th or 5th or 6th, one is missing, that's where we have a machloikis. Atkan machloikis bananas for a kippah. It's only on signature 4 through unlimited that we have a question on as to whether or not it could be a possible aid. Aval kishar of shloisha, the aid of shnayim. So you have to understand, every normal get needs 2. By definition, a get kosher mandates at least the 3rd aid. So if it's the 3rd aid, which is the critical one to be mastered, is getting kosher, there divrei akoil ein mashlimin alav elokar. There even Bananas agrees that you cannot use a puzzle aid. It's a critical aid in the kiyum of the shtar, not because you actually need an aid to validate it, because a car is allowed, but it's still an integral part of the getting kosher. Therefore, everybody agrees. So our mission is not discussing a case where we're discussing a blank part of the 3rd aid. We're talking about if the 4th line was blank or the 5th fold was blank. Omer le Rab Zeira le Rabba Bar Shilta. Rab Zeira asked Rabba Bar Shilta that question. Mifti, kol shloisha ben kosher kishnayim v'pah. The first 3 Eidim in a get kosher is the integral get. So it's like the 2 Eidim by a regular get. So if that's the case, it's kishnayim b'pashadam. So if that's the case, mahasam karev loi, just like the 2 Eidim that sign a normal get, neither of the Eidim can be a karev. Av hakanami karev loi. So the 3rd signature, which is an integral part of the structure of a get kosher, maybe you should need a regular kosher aid. That was the question that he asked Rabbi Bar Shilta. Amalei, Rabbi Shilta said that's a very good question. I have the same question. So what did I do? I asked Rabbi Hamnuna, and Rabbi Hamnuna didn't know. So Rabbi Hamnuna asked Rabbi Hamnuna to Rabbi Adabar. Well, Amalei, you know what he answered? Don't worry about the 3rd aid in the get kosher. The whole concept of the get kosher, it's not midaraisa. Midaraisa kohen can give the same get as anybody else. There's a special takana because of a kohen who might be a little bit fast on the trigger to slow things down. So the whole thing is derabanan. Therefore, the 3rd aid doesn't have to be a real kosher aid. A karev would be acceptable. Tani namihachi get kerech kosher of shiva of aid of shisha, or shisha of aid of chamisha, or chamisha of aid of arba, Arba Veda, Shloisha, Ad Tan Machloikis Bananas Verbaki. Up until the third aid is where you have a Machloikis that Hishlam of Eved, if an Eved was the one who made either the fourth signature or more, Bananas Verbak Kosher, Verbkiva, Verbak Mamzer's Pah. Al Kshar of Shloisha, Veda of Shnayim. But what if you only had three folds and you're missing the third aid? Divra Akol in Mashlimin Allah Ela Karev, like we just said. And Rabbi Yosef Masni Kosher. Rabbi Yosef learned that it actually has to be a full kosher aid. It can't even be a karev for that third aid. Right, tomorrow about Tanya karev, we had a brisa that says just a moment ago that a karev would be allowed. Mar Papa Tani kosher. Rabbi Yossi will learn that the brisa, he will have a different gears in the brisa, that it needs to be an aid kosher, cannot be a karev. Rabbi Yochanan said, let's learn another Allah. Loi hukshu boy ella aid echad karev l'bad. Out of all the signatures, no matter how many you're getting the kosher is, let's say 7, only one of the 7 could be a karev. Or if there's only 6, only one of the 6 could be a karev. Only one. All the others have to be perfectly kosher. Avol trey loy. Never are you allowed to have 2 tosala edim on get the kosher. Why? Because what happens if the baal is ma'ar a year later that your get is possible? So, and you cannot find the original Aiden who signed the get. So what do they have to do? They have to find Aiden who will recognize at least 3 signatures on the get to know that it was a get Mekosher. So out of all the 6 or 7 signatures, we'll need Aiden that will at least recognize 3 of those signatures. So let's think about it. If they could just pick random one of 3 signatures, if there's 2 of these signatures that they recognize would have been Kroivim, it's possible that then when they're going to be Mekayim 3 signatures, 2 of the 3 are going to be Kroivim, which is possible. The 2 people the 2 out of the 3 people that they recognize might be Kroivim. The Bezdin who's in a different city who's been Mekayim the star, they have no idea that those 2 people were Kroivim, and it's going to come out that we're going to be Mekayim a get through 2 Kroivim, which are possible Eidim for a get, and we wouldn't really be able to be Mekayim a get based on them. So you have arrived from here that the maximum amount of Kroivim allowed on the get Mekosher is 1, and therefore if we're Mekayim 3 signatures, we can be 100% sure that 2 of the 3 are kosher aid. Actually, if you look at the brisa that we quoted, it's very clear, because the brisa only discusses if you're missing 1 signature. The bride says if you had 7 lines, 7 folds, and 6 signatures. How come the bride doesn't discuss if you had 7 folds and 5 signatures? The teretz is there's no havamina that would be good. And let's turn on to the Pei Beis Amud Aleph just to finish the sugya. Dr. Haley Gemara, we're going to finish the parak. The Kamadalik Vitani Chad Chad. All of the examples in the brisa where if you're missing 1 signature, never does the brisa consider with 2 signatures missing, because there only 1 karev would be allowed. Shema mina. Amar Abaye, there's another thing we could learn from what we just discussed. Shema mina, high karev chotin, when the karev signs, he doesn't have to sign the last line or the first line. Any line he could sign on. Iboy bein betchila, bein beemtza, bein besoif. No matter where the karev signs, it would be acceptable. How do you see that? Mimai, midaloi kavaloi makat. Because there's no, the Mishnah says it was karcha, right? The Mishnah doesn't say where it was karcha. Anywhere, any line that was missing is discussed in the Mishnah. And the Mishnah says any line that was missing, you would be able to fill with a karev. So you see that there's no specific place where the karev would sign. And there's another thing we can learn from what we just discussed. Ushmamina mikol tlasa mikamina. When we need Adam to verify these signatures, they only have to verify 3 signatures, and any 3 signatures that they verify are good. It could be 1, 3, and 6. It could be 2, 4, and 7. It could be any 3 signatures. They don't need to be consecutive signatures. We don't say that they have to be Mekayim at least 3 signatures in a row. It could be 3 random signatures. How do you know that? If when Adam are Makayim the get, they need to be able to identify 3 signatures that are in a row, well then I have a simple way to be able to configure the get, and you could even have multiple kroivim signed. We're not allowing more than one card to sign because we're concerned that they're going to be Makayim the get with 2 kroivim. But we can configure the get in such a way that never will there be 2 kroivim in the list of kiyum if it has to be in order. Because think about it. You can do it like this. The first person that signs could be a kosher. The second one that signs will be a karv. And the third will be a kosher. Then you repeat the set. The fourth will be a kosher. The fifth will be a apostle. And the sixth will be a kosher. Any 3 signatures in a row in consecutive order that you are Makayim, 2 of the 3 will have to be ksherim. So if you hold that when you're being Makayim a get, you have to be Makayim 3 signatures in a row, and you can't just pick 3 randoms, we should have allowed more than one Karev to sign the get, and we would set it up that they would sign it in a very specific configuration where you would never have 3 in a row that didn't include at least 2 ksherim. The create any type of sequence where you'll never have a selection of 3 signatures in a row that don't contain at least 2 ksherim, and then you can allow more than one karev to sign the get. But we don't say that. The maximum amount of krovim that can sign the get is 1. So you see that the kiyum can be completely random. When they came to Rabami, again, they had a case where there was one guy missing. They underestimated how many folds there were going to be. And Rabami said, just bring in an Eved. Clearly, he's paskening like Ben Anis. Baruch Hashem, we were zoichet to finish the parak. Hadun Allah Chazoyrik, the Lineder Hadun Allah Chazoyrik, the Lineder Hadun Allah Chazoyrik. Tomorrow at 7, Beth Hashem, and at 9, we'll start Parak HaMegarsh, which is the last parak of this Heilige Masechta. I want to wish everybody a good tavach, a gebench tavach, mazel de tavach.